All right, guys, so we've been talking about asynchronous JavaScript, and one of the most, or if not the most common task or use case for asynchronous JavaScript is working with backend servers or APIs and making requests. And the way that we communicate with a server, or whether that's your own server that you created with like Node.js or a PHP, C Sharp, or any language at all, or a public API like the Twitter API or the GitHub API, where you can fetch specific tweets or specific GitHub repositories, whatever it is you're trying to do. We do this by making HTTP requests. So I want to talk specifically about HTTP in this video. So HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and it's the protocol that we use to send and receive data on the web. And it's a client-server protocol, meaning that requests are initiated by the client, usually the web browser, and then the server will respond with a specific type of response. And every time you go to a web page, your browser is making what we call a GET request to the server. And then the server is responding with things like HTML file, the CSS files, the JavaScript files, also media like images, videos, whatever is on that web page. Now we can also make requests to get data, to get JSON data or even XML data, which is kind of outdated. But when we make HTTP requests from our code, from our JavaScript code, typically what we'll get back, or most commonly what we'll get back, is JSON data. And then we can use that data to display it on our page or whatever we want to do with it. Okay, we can also make requests to submit data to the server. Maybe we want to update a field in a database. We want to add a blog post or a workout or whatever the application does. Now, as far as making the request from JavaScript, there's a few ways to do this, but most commonly you're going to use the Fetch API, which is included with the window object in the browser. Now, there are other third-party tools you can use like Axios. There's also an older method called Ajax, or the what we call the XML HTTP request, or XHR object. And that was kind of the original way of making HTTP requests, but these days you're mostly going to use the Fetch API. Now, I do want to show you how to use the XHR object and show you kind of the old school Ajax way before we get into the Fetch API, which deals with promises, which we haven't talked about yet. All right. Now, as far as what we do and then the types of requests that we make, there's different methods for different tasks. So there's 4 really common ones, and that's get, post, put, and delete. So a GET request is used to fetch data from the server, whether that's going to a web page and then getting the HTML file and everything that comes with it, or making a GET request from our JavaScript to get, let's say, a set of blog posts or whatever. All right. A post request is used to send data to the server. When you submit a form, like if you go to, I don't know, a WordPress site or something like that, and you submit a blog post, it's going to make a post request to send that data to the server, and then that data gets added to the database through the server code. There's also a put request if you want to update data on a server. Now, I also put patch because that's pretty common as well. You could use put or patch to update data on a server. And then, of course, a delete request will delete or remove data from a server. So those are the 4 methods that you really need to get familiar with. Now, when you get the response back, you're going to get a specific status code. So I am going to go over these now, but don't worry about it if you don't remember them. You're going to learn all of these in time. So it goes by range. So the 100 range, for example, just means continue. It's basically when the response is not done yet and the request is still processing. So you don't really deal with the 100 range that much. 200 range means success. So whether that is fetching data and the data is delivered, that's success. If you submit a form and make a post request and everything goes as it was supposed to, you get a success. All right, the 300 range it pertains to redirects. So if something isn't there anymore, or if something is permanently moved, 400 range has to do with client error. So if you submit a form and you forget a required field, you might get a 400 response back. Also, if you're not authorized, things like that. And then the 500 range is server error, meaning that it's not the client's fault, something went wrong on the server. Now, these are ranges. These over here are specific codes that mean specific things. And there's obviously much more than this, but these are the most common. So 200, again, that's going to be success. I'd say that's the most common out of all the codes, and that's mainly what you want to look for. A 201 may be returned, which means everything it's successful. Also, something was created. So if you add like a blog post to a database, you might get a 201 response back if everything is successful. 204 means no content. So sometimes you'll see this if you delete a resource and you're not actually getting any data back, you're just deleting it, but it's successful, you might see a 204. 301 means whatever resource you're trying to access has been moved. 400 means that it's a bad request. Like I said, if you forget a field or something like that. 401 means you're unauthorized. Typically, if you try to access something where you're not logged in and you're supposed to be logged in, you'll get unauthorized. 403 just means forbidden, means that whatever user is making the request doesn't have access. 404 means not found. I'm sure most of you know that. People that aren't even web developers know that, because a lot of times you go to a web page and it doesn't exist and you see 404 not found, right? And then 500 means that, again, that there's some kind of error on the server. Now, before we get into making requests through our code, I just want to show you that in the browser, whether you're using Chrome or Firefox, there's a network tab in your DevTools, and you can use that to see exactly what requests are made and what you got for a response, along with the status code and any data and just anything that you want to find out about that response. So we're going to look a little into that in the next video.